Al mikomo yavo shalom. Thank you everyone for joining us. Ordinarily at this time in the process of the Jewish funeral, we would recite the Tziduk Hadin, a series of biblical verses, Mishnaic verses that express our sadness, but our understanding that God has some sort of cosmic plan in taking our loved one. Because it's Erev Rosh Hashanah, because it's right before a major Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the new year, it starts in just a few hours, we are not going to do that. Instead, what I wanted to do is invite everyone to just close their eyes and to think about a moment with Hartley, a moment that fills you with a positive interaction with him. Knowing Hartley, it could have been some sort of humorous, sarcastic remark, or something tender, because he had the capacity for both. It's traditional at a Jewish funeral to recite from the ancient wisdom of the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. And so I'm going to chant first in the Hebrew, Psalm 23, and then offer a translation. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echzar, dino deshe yarbitzeini, al mei menucha jinahaleini, nafshi shoev yancheni, v'magle tzedek leman shemo, kama ki elech v'geitzal mavet, lo yirara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha, Hema yinachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged torai, dishanta v'Hashem en roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yudafuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Psalm of David, Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. We're gathered here today to pay our tribute of affection and respect to our dear friend and loved one, Hartley Fread Chaim ben Miriam, who has been taken from us. Hartley was born in Toronto on September 23rd, 1964, and he left this world on September 3rd, corresponding to the Hebrew date of the 26th of Elul. He was preceded in death by his mother, Marion, his grandparents, Anne and Charles Ross, and his uncle, Ben Ross. And we reach out with sympathy to his family, to his sister Tammy and her husband Stan. to his nephew Jaden and his niece Kaylee, to cousins and many, many friends that Hartley created throughout his lifetime. It's now my honor to call on someone who was a friend, in many ways someone who is, in the last several months, has been a caretaker to Hartley, like a big sister, I think, even though he was older, much, much older, Danette.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name is Danette Jaworski, and I am Hartley's friend. I met Hartley 20 years ago and soon came to appreciate his wit and dry sense of humor. Not to mention his loyalty and honesty. As any human, he had many flaws, and at times these flaws led him in a wrong direction. Elie Wiesel wrote, "Whatever you do in life, remember, think higher, feel deeper. Life is not a fist. Life is an open hand waiting for some other hand to enter it in friendship." Ultimately, the answers are so simple, not simplistic, but simple. Hartley did not expect much from others, only to have the same sense of loyalty and honesty he gave. Gary Zuka wrote, "The essence of a person is not the clothing he wears, are the things he does. People who love them do not stop loving them when they change clothing or do other things. Your essence is not even your history, culture, race, or what you think or do. It is your soul." Hartley is a loyal, honest soul. We will miss you, my friend. You mattered, and you are loved. I will leave you with some of Hartley's dry humor, something he may say as we depart today. "It's a beautiful day, and you leave me alone?"
Thank you so much, Danette. Hartley passed away peacefully at his home after a battle with cancer, and he fought hard and always kept a brave face. He was the oldest of two, a loyal son to his mom and a dedicated older brother to Tammy. As a child, he attended Talmud Torah and graduated from the Joseph Walensky Collegiate, and I hope it brings him some measure of comfort to know that some of his classmates who graduated with him are here. After high school, Hartley went on to study architectural drafting at Red River Community College. Unfortunately, it was difficult for him to find a job in this field, and so he looked elsewhere for employment. As you know, Hartley was not pretentious and was determined to make a living. He worked as a security guard, as a driver for Park and Fly, as a limo driver, and also in recent months as a staff member at the Chesed. I also think he worked at the Manitoba Museum. Hartley moved to Winnipeg right around the age of 6. Tammy shared with me that Hartley lived in the same building, not so far from where we are, in that direction, for 50 years, starting in 1971. But she did say first he lived with his mom and Tammy in 106, then the three of them moved into 108, and finally after his mom passed away in 2009, Hartley moved into 105. Still, he remained in the same building. Hartley was well liked by his neighbors and became close to many. The family would like to offer their gratitude to Terry for all of his assistance in looking out for Hartley in the last year or so. Throughout his experiences in his various jobs, Hartley had a way of endearing himself to his co-workers. Along the way, many of them became good friends. And I think some of you might fit into that category. Hartley had many interests. He enjoyed making models of monsters, and if I'm not mistaken, his driver's license was Dracu We think the A was missing? Yeah. Dracul. And had an affinity for scorpions, snakes, and other slithering creatures. Spiders, sorry, yeah. And I think there's more. Tarantulas and other. He also loved his daily walks in Kildonan Park. This is where he would often meet with friends. And this is where he found solace. To suggest that Hartley was smitten by his nephew and niece would not be an exaggeration at all. He adored Jaden and Kaylee. And when they were young, he would take them to Kildonan Park, the movies, and sometimes to look at the Mustangs at a local car dealership. Kaylee shared that even though he was not supposed to have sugar, because he was a diabetic, he enjoyed her baking quite a bit. As cliche as it might sound, Hartley was one of a kind. He was fiercely loyal, and at times he could be extremely stubborn, but there were other character traits which he possessed. He was a tidy, neat person. He was also impeccable about his appearance. Everything was neat. Not a crumb or a piece of lint could be found on him. He also liked some finer things, one of them being Lincoln cars, and rings and watches. I want to share just a note that I received from my oldest brother, Avi. Avi and Hartley started in school when they were both really young, and they happened to be good friends throughout their time in school at Talmatora and Joseph Walensky. And one of the things Avi shared with me is that Hartley had this way, if you know anything about my brother Avi, he's also a character, and multifaceted, brilliant, but at a time in their adolescent years where it wasn't always acceptable amongst your peers to be somewhat different, somewhat out of the norm, my brother shared with me that Hartley was always affirming of who Avi was, and there was never any judgment and never any pressure that my brother felt to be somebody he wasn't. That's an outstanding quality, and I think all of you have felt that from Hartley. As we look back upon his life, we see that despite far more than his share of adversity, Hartley was blessed with a good life, one that brought him a measure of happiness, joy, contentment, and fulfillment. Hartley was mostly a quiet and thoughtful person, but he also had a wicked sense of humor. His sarcasm is legendary. I just want to see your faces. Has anybody ever experienced a little Hartley zing? Or where you were trying very hard not to laugh in a particular moment, but you couldn't help it because of how deeply his sense of humor penetrated into your psyche. I shared with the family, I shared with them just one little Bissell thing that I can repeat in public. I can't repeat some of the other ones. But a few months ago, I dropped something off for Hartley, and I walked out, meeting him in the parking lot because it's COVID, and I was wearing a kippah, and he thanked me, and I said, "Oh, I think this is the place you've lived in for a long time." He said, "Yeah," and believe me, every single one of my neighbors is watching us interact right now, and boy, are they going to have a heyday. I mean, that's a mild one. There are others, like I said, I can't repeat right now, but some of you know that Hartley was an amazing artist. And I can remember this from when I was a little kid. Sometimes when he would visit with my brother in our house, he would show me some of the figures he had created on paper, mostly monsters. His sense of detail and appreciation for all the nuances, it was just incredible. And in his honor, I'd like to share a story which I ordinarily tell on this evening on Rosh Hashanah, on the New Year. The story goes like this. There was once a king who owned an enormous and very beautiful diamond. Every day, the king took the diamond from its jewel-encrusted box and locked it with awe as the gem transformed sunlight into magnificent shimmering kaleidoscopes of color. It made him very happy. One day, the king accidentally dropped the diamond. It grazed the side of the box and then fell heavily to the floor on the throne room. Picking it up, the king found a long, jagged scratch down one side of the stone. Horrified, he immediately called upon his royal jewelers to repair the gem, but they were unable to do so. And then the king called upon jewelers from all throughout his empire, but none were able to repair the diamond. Finally, a pauper appeared at the palace and said that he could repair the king's jewel. And the king and his advisors were wary at first, but then realizing they had nothing to lose, they invited the pauper to proceed. The pauper retreated to another room, and after working for a week, he emerged and handed the king his diamond box. Sitting upon his throne, the king opened the box, smiled with delight, and held up the jewel for all to see. See, the pauper had done something incredible. The pauper had not removed the jagged line at all. Instead, he had etched an image of a rose onto one end of it, leaving the scratch as the stem of the beautiful flower. We know that some wounds won't go away, but if we handle them right, they can make the wounded even more beautiful than before. So this is a time of teshuvah, of some people want to translate it as repentance. I like to translate it as a realignment of the best of ourselves. And so may we be inspired in this for us who are Jewish, but for all of us, because we need to do this on a daily basis. May we be inspired to go through that process of teshuvah, not erasing our mistakes, but looking to make them flourishes that are beautiful, things that Hartley might have created, certainly on paper, but in his relationships with others. Before we move to the remaining rituals, I want to pause here. There's a wonderful Jewish tradition. It's not done in too many places that I've seen, but there's a minhag, a custom that says this is the time where we ask the deceased for forgiveness. And I don't know all of what was inside of Hartley, and I certainly don't pretend that I knew him all that well. I wasn't part of his close company, but I feel tremendously honored that he wanted me to officiate at his funeral. Having said that, I have to imagine that there were parts of his life that were difficult. And sometimes we as a community, we tend to assume that people are just walking around the world just fine. And because they don't share those things from their insides, we make that assumption, and sometimes we neglect to ask people how they really are, not beyond that superficial level. And I think Hartley, I'm not going to name those things, but Hartley had his share of adversity and difficulty, and that started from a young age, and that he faced some difficulty throughout his life as an adult. So Hartley, on behalf of our Jewish community, I just want to ask for your forgiveness. And hopefully we can do right by you by being more sensitive to others who are in similar positions. May we be inspired by his passion for life, and we thank God for all the blessings which you, Adonai, have bestowed upon us in the form of Chaim ben Miriam. Tehei nafsho tzura b'tzura chayim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. I just want to mention that donations in Hartley's honor can be made to Cancer Care Manitoba or Diabetes Canada. I also want to share with you that a celebration of life will take place immediately after we have concluded our service. It will be at Kildonan Park. You ready for this? The green space adjacent to the pavilion parking lot. Only Danette could come up with that description, and I have no clue where that is. And I've been to Kildonan Park 1,000 or 25,000. Southwest, okay. But I also want to mention that this was Hartley's office. This is where he would meet, and this is where he was at his best with people. a really hard moment to take in. Rabbi, whose name I'm not remembering right now, said that there are two sounds in this world that are earth-shattering. The cry of a newborn baby and the earth that lands on the casket of a mother. So we hold the shovel in this particular way. It's a way to let God know we're disappointed with God's decision. We acquiesce. We understand that God has God's reason. The custom is to do this like that. I'm going to suggest everyone who can do it this way once, and turn it over, and place two more shovels. And then you place the shovel down and allow the next individual to have his or her sacred space, sacred time, by involving themselves in the stroke themselves. And there are two sides, shovel, there's two on each side actually. So I would encourage us to do this. We want to, at a bare minimum, we want to cover the top. So if everyone would like to participate, we'll ask family first to come. Everyone else is invited. Yes, sir. Folks, if others want to start on this side, you're welcome to do so.
Without actually coming out and saying, do you have time? Because anytime we have time, I just asked him how he did the practice, and he said, oh, just go to me. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. So that's good news.
Oh yeah, my sister family together. And she got me.
My one old cat has that, before she passed, and I would always have to flip it because I know hers is different stuff. So yeah, that's when he was saying, telling me that when I first started, was saying it was like it's starting to go into so just that's painful, yeah. I know how to. So ask me that today, we used to picking it when I was going, used to, and then I did put it was so he was going to no, I know how to do that, but if I see the story into the cat, then I would have to take it to the vet and they would have to do it. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's painful for them. Hopefully it's not. Well, I live in the country and it's country vet, so it's pretty. Yeah. I was giving blood and I didn't know if I would make it here on time, but it was like 3:30 right in the nose.
How are your cats doing?
Oh, spoiled rotten.
Do you guys do it too?
Thanks, everyone. Gentleman behind me and now to my right wanted me to mention that the word for Hartley was Rachmanis. Yeah, he had rachamim, he had compassion, which isn't that fascinating because that's such an important theme within Judaism and within this particular time of the year. I'm going to recite the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer, and then after that we're going to recite the Mourner's Kaddish, and there'll be one more thing, and then that'll conclude the service. And I ask you to just stand in quiet and as we honor Hartley. El Malei Rachamim Eshochein Bamromim Hamtze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Shechina B'malhot Kedoshim Utorim Kezora Kiyam Matirim Et Nishmat Chaim Ben Miriam Shalach Leolamo B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchato Ana Bal Rachamim Hastirehu B'Set Knafecha Leolamim Utzror B'Tzra Chaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachlato V'Tanuach B'Shalom HaMishkavo V'Nomar Amen. So we're going to have you guys take out the Kaddish cards. And together we'll recite Ikadal V'Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'almad Divrach Yirutei V'Yamlich Malchutei V'Chayechon V'Yamechon V'Chayei D'Chol Beit Yisrael V'Agala V'Zman Kari V'Yimaru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Umei Amaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shemei Dekudasha V'Yichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Damiran Ve'alma V'Yimaru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'Yimaru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Romav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'Yimaru Amen. So Tammy, Stan, Jaden, and Kaylee, and maybe Danette will accompany you. If you'll walk through the space on the sidewalk here. And so we'll have some people facing, I always use this statement, some people of an older generation get, it's like a Sadie Hawkins dance. You know, there's got to be a better way to frame it, but if you wouldn't mind walking through that space, and we say to you these words of comfort. Within this space, we understand that it's our obligation to attend to the needs of the mourners, and we recite this verse, Hamakom yinachem etchem betoch shar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God continue to grant you comfort amongst all the mourners, Zion, Jerusalem, and I'll add throughout the entire world. To our Jewish friends, I want to wish you Shana Tova Umetuka, happy, healthy, and a sweet New Year. And to everyone else, I'll take this opportunity to wish you a Shana Tova. May every day be sweet, and may we continue to be guided by warm memories of our loved one, of Hartley. Thank you so much. Shalom.